This is loose leaf. It smells like a tea shop. Oh, you know what? I think I want this whole room to smell like this. Oh, that smells good. But we just drop it in. We just drop it in. That. And while we talk, it is going to steep. Look at that. All right, now this is supposed to dance. It's dancing. It's burning my hand. Ouch. But anyway, here we go. So, while we'll talk, we'll do that. So, what are you thinking about? This is what I'm thinking about. You are in a good place. Now, you might look at your circumstances and situations and like, man, I wish I had this. I wish I had that. Which reminds me of a story. And I don't know if this was an African story. When I read it, it almost sounded kind of like an Anansi story, but it didn't have the spider or anything like that. But here it goes. One day, a lowly wood stone cutter was in his workshop, and he would chip away at his stone, and it was so mundane and it was so monotonous, and he just wished that he could have a not so boring life. He wasn't content. He wasn't happy with the place that he was in. So, as the story goes, a king was going by his shop, coming down the street. And, everybody was making all this fuss. He went out there to see what was going on. What's going on? And, oh man, it's the king. And he looked at the king and he said, he has so much prestige and grace and power. I wish I was in that position. And immediately, he was in the position of king. His wish was granted. He was king, and he thought it was good to go down the street, and his parade was in front of him, and all the people worshipped him. Well, not worship, admired him, and he thought that was great. But as he was going down, famine hit his land. The sun was beaming down, and it was hot like today. The high is supposed to be 97 degrees. So it's hot. And the sunbeams is just burning up everything. The people are hiding for cover. And he's like, now that's power. Look at it. Look how the sun controls everything. Man, that's some power. I wish I was the sun. And boom, his wish was granted. He was the sun. So he's in space and he's beaming down, and everything is, wow, I have control over this. I make the plants, I help the plants to grow. I do this and I do that because of my power. And this small cloud passed in front of his sun rays. And all the people was like, finally, there's a cloud in the sky. And they were all out playing and having a good time. And because the sun wasn't like burning everything up. And he was like, oh, look at that. My goodness. Now that's some power. It blocks the sun and everybody is happy. I wish I had that kind of power. I wish I was a cloud. And boom, he is a cloud. His wish was granted. So he's being a cloud. And what do clouds do? Eventually they rain. And it was raining. And he's like, man, I can produce water. I can water the crops. I can make the people feel good. I can have the water rise where everybody can swim and have a good time. And he decided, hey, you know what? This is nice. I got some power. I wonder what I can really do, what I can really do with this water. So he made it rain, and he was testing his limits, and he made it flood. So he was, flexing power. Floods everywhere. Everything is underwater. But he noticed that as strong as the waters were, the rocks weren't moving. The rocks weren't going away. The rocks were standing up against it. And people were using rocks to dam up some of the streams and things to stop that water. And he's like, these rocks are pretty unmovable. That's pretty cool. Those are some powerful rocks. I wish I was a rock. And guess what? Boom. His wish was granted. He was a powerful, guess what? Stone. And he's like, I'm a mighty rock. I'm a stone. Nothing can move me. And one day, he was looking prestigious. And a lonely stonecutter came with his hammer and his chisel, chipped him out, took him home, and he could do nothing. He couldn't move. He couldn't do anything. And he was like, this stonecutter cut through me like it was nothing. And I've been everything, but I guess nothing is as good as being a stonecutter. I wish I was a stonecutter again. And boom, his wish was granted. He was a lowly stonecutter again. Now, to him, being everything and seeing what a stonecutter did and the power that he had, he was very happy with his life. Before he wasn't. And which brings us to today's thought. Today's thought is you are in a good place. You might wish to be here and wish to be there and wish to be over there and wish to be the CEO of this big company. But where you are, God has placed you. And we find ourselves living in the limits that we limit ourselves to. So you have the environment that God sets us in. I teach the kids this about this all the time. When God created everything, he said, he spoke to the sea and said, let there be fish. Well, he spoke to everything. He spoke to the night and said, let there be light. Boom, there was light. He spoke to the sea, let there be fish. Boom. He spoke to the ground. Hey, let there be crawling things all over the place. It's a beast of the field. And boom, there it was. He said, hey, let there be birds in the air. Cheep, 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 cheep. Everything's flying around, right? And if you notice, when he spoke to these things, you might have heard me talk about this before, but when he spoke to the environment that he was placing things in, that he was creating those things in, it thrives there. Fish thrive in the water. Okay? But if the fish says, I'm not happy being in the water, I want to walk around like a dog. If the fish jumps out of the water, what happens? It dies. Not a very good thing for the fish. If a monkey, which is on the ground and in the trees, says, you know what? Fish looks like they're having fun. It's cool in that water. I want to swim. I want to live like a fish. When it goes underwater, guess what happens? It drowns. It dies because it's leaving the environment. If a bird who flies most of the time leaves that environment and comes to the ground, usually it becomes prey. It dies. Now, when God created man, guess what he spoke to? What environment did he speak to create it? He spoke to himself. He said, let us make man in our own image. So, when man decides to leave his environment, guess what happens? That's correct. It usually does not go very well for that man. So you're in a good place. You can wish to be all these things. And sometimes those wishes are granted. But there's always a step above. Where he places you, that's where you're going to thrive the most. And you'll notice this is not a bad thing though. You know, you grow. The environment changes. And you change as your environment changes. If you, let's say, I wrote a whole section in this book called right. Well, your influences affect your outcomes. So you have in and your out. The stuff that you put in affects the things that comes out. Okay? Your influences affect your outcomes. So your environment that you're placed in, when you thrive in it, it starts to change. Okay? If you don't thrive in it, it'll start to change. He can place you in a place and you just tear it all up and it goes down. It becomes a negative experience. And as it becomes a negative experience, guess what? You become a negative person. And a negative person usually will affect everything all around it in a negative way. When somebody's nice and happy comes up to you and you're negative and you're not happy with your life that you're living in, you start barking at that person and that person has a bad day, and then chain reaction. They probably have a bad day with somebody else and bark at them and their kids, and nobody's happy. But if you're taking that environment and you said, you know what, whatever it is, I'm going to thrive in this environment. I'm going to make it mine. God gave me this territory, this environment to rule and have dominion over. I'm going to make this mine. And when you choose to make it yours, guess what? You rule and reign over it. Somebody comes into it and you're just like, I'm going to bless you. And guess what? It turns out that they'll do the same thing for somebody else. You know what? I'm having a good day. I'm going to bless you. And that person, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to bless you. And you change the world. You're in a good place. And if you're not feeling that you're in a good place that God has put you in, you might want to look at the environment and how it is either one of two things. Either it has turned negative because you allowed it to, you're not taking care of it, or you've inserted yourself into an environment that you don't belong. And you're feeling the repercussions of it, those decisions that you're making. I want to be a CEO. Say God is growing you in your business mind. But before you can take over and be super entrepreneur, he might have you studying under somebody who's already there. So you can learn the ropes. So you can learn what to do and what not to do. But if you say, I ain't working for nobody, I don't got nothing to learn, I'm going to do this thing, and you jump out and you do it on your own, you're going to have a hard time because you're taking yourself out of the environment that God has placed you in to learn. And that might be just for a season, but since you jumped the ship and you've gone and did what you wanted to do, you notice that everything is hard. And not only hard, it's working against you. You might feel like you're dying. So be thankful for the place that God puts you in. Even if it's not where you want to be, it's not lining up with your vision, but you're going to have to ask God to show you where you belong and to keep you content to where you are. So, we're going to try this. And look at that. It looks like a big old glob in there. I'm glad I got my, well, let me get my well, that's the first pour cut. I could do a first pour, but we're just gonna chase this. We're gonna be happy with this environment that we're in. We can do a whole nother thing on what first pour is. I might talk about that later. But look at that. Look at that, look at that, look at that. Ooh, it smells good. It smells so different. All right. You ready for this? Kampai. It's very, very earthy. It's very strong, earthy. So my next cup, I'm going to have the Biscoff. But like I said, it's very earthy. Floral, herbal. It tastes like a hint of oolong and a bunch of flowers put together. But it's not bad. Yes, I did drink it. It's very good. And you know what? I'm hoping you're satisfied where you are and you're going to have a great week. And, you know, continue to thrive in your environment. All right? This is to you. Kampai.